Welcome to the Dignity Dialogue with your host, Joe Kiedinger.
And now it's time to play What's Your Number One? All right. Okay, we'll refer to this in a little bit. But this is Joe Kiedinger. I'm here with April. We are here on the Dignity Dialogue, talking about the subject of agile leadership. It's a two-part series, and this is the second part. So, April, kind of kick us off and set us up here.
Well, as we said in our last podcast, and of course, you can always go out and watch the first one after the second one as well. Yeah. You can put them in either order. But it's exciting to talk about this idea of agile leadership, being able to, as leaders, being flexible, understanding strategy. You kind of have to understand a little bit of everything when we're talking about agile leadership. But we got on the topic in our last podcast about vision. It's important to have a combination of a solid vision and then execution. And quite often, people have a great idea. It may not be a vision.
Right.
They have a great idea, but they can't get to that place of completing that execution for it, right? And so it just ends up being a great idea.
That's right.
But when we have the vision for it and then we have that execution piece, now we're really talking, and we're really looking at success when that happens. And so in our last podcast, we talked a lot about the vision piece of it. And we do a lot of visions here at Dignify, and you spend a lot of time working with leaders on their visions. And we talked about what is really needed in those visions, some key steps for those visions. And we got to that place of asking your people to commit, right? Committing to being uncomfortable.
That's right.
With the change, right? And really committing to that. I commit to that every time I buy a plane ticket.
Only wet babies like change.
That's right. That's it. Okay. So committing our people, helping our people commit to being uncomfortable through change. And so this week we're going to talk about execution. Like, how do we really do that? And a couple key areas that we're going to look at today is really about our people, understanding our people. Everybody's different. We're all wired differently. We all come from different backgrounds. We have different stories. We talked in the first one about stories. We're going to talk a little bit about that again today with stories, and understanding that everybody's story is a part of how they're going to walk through the journey of making your vision reality.
Yeah. Right.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
And I'd like to kick it off with a story.
I love it.
All right. So in 2002, I left a television station selling commercial airtime due to a mentor of mine who owned 4 grocery stores, and started my own ad agency. Right? Danica and I started an advertising agency with just the two of us, and that grew into a marketing firm. Within the context of that journey, I was introduced to servant leadership by that mentor. Mm-hmm. It changed my heart. He kept pounding in my head that our culture is what's going to grow our business, not marketing. Marketing will just accelerate what was going to happen anyway.
Right.
Right? So there's a need for it, but it's not the leading indicator, it's the lagging. Like, if you already have a great culture and you're already executing and you already have a great products, now marketing makes sense, right? Because marketing a bad product will just collapse anyway. And what builds great products and companies is culture. So he was pounding this in my head. And so I had this idea. Now, you mentioned getting an idea to execution. So that's really our story. Mm-hmm. An idea based on servant leadership principles of creating a culture operating system. See, because of his passion in servant leadership, I was introduced to Jim Hunter, who wrote the book The Servant, and he wrote The Culture, and he has the principles of servant leadership, sold millions of copies. Tom Thibodeau, who runs the servant leadership master's program at Viterbo University. So I had these awesome, and many, and of course we researched, Maxwell and Covey. I mean, all this stuff, right? But I realized that everyone tells you why leadership's important and what makes up great leadership. But what I couldn't find is how to execute. So that's the idea, okay? Now, I'm an advertising marketing firm. I'm not a leadership development company. I'm not a culture program. So now, how do you paint a vision for the future to your employees that in their mind has nothing to do with marketing? I'm here as a graphic designer. I'm here as a copywriter. I'm here as, fill in the blank. How do you transform? So what we're sharing with you is really our story. How do you go from a marketing firm of 18 years, 17 years, and transform into this new leadership development culture COS system? How do you do that? And you do it by having an idea. You have to write a vision, which my first vision about this was in 2016. The first vision about moving in that direction. Did it mean getting rid of marketing? No. It meant the transforming to a vision of where we want to go and helping people find their space within that vision, right? Where am I going to fit? To help shut down the negative voice that says, well, I'm out of a job and, all this stuff. This is a process. This isn't we're flicking a switch. And so that transference led to creating a culture operating system. So our subject now is agile leadership, right? Part of what we've researched is that a vision is a critical component, which we talked about in our last podcast, all the elements of that. So if you're a leader of a department, if you're the leader of a division, or you're a leader of a company, that would be for you to watch. Now, how do we get everyone on board to see how they fit in executing the idea?
Yes.
Right? So idea has to go to vision. Vision has to go to execution and participation.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about today. So when we throw this little board up, right, what is your number one? These are and I know you can't read it from there, but there are 56 dignity traits that we invented. I mean, we created a system to unpack and reveal to you the driving force of every human being, that which is very rich in them, their superior talent, that which they're willing to give freely because it makes them feel good. And there's 56 of these dignity drivers. And so we use these drivers because you have a team, and some teams are really gifted at tasky things like organization. Some are really talented at research, right? Some are very talented at maybe selling the idea or brainstorming on a big level. Some are really good at the final details, like they're perfectionists and they struggle with the big picture idea, but once they have some structure, they can fine tune it to make it excellent. Right? So when we ask you what's your number one, what we're saying is that in agile leadership, the agile world doesn't realize Dignify exists. Right? So you have to pick this up on your own, which sometimes you can figure that out, like who's the high creatives, who's the perfectionists, who's the collection data people, but typically you don't know it unless it's extreme with an individual.
I would agree.
So what we've done is we've fast forwarded the execution phase. If you know exactly what drives each of your leaders, now we can split up the burden based on what makes them strong, based on their team members underneath them, because they all have unique talents. Now people can participate in the process of the change within the context of what they're already passionate about. And that is the biggest difference. That is what accelerates your vision faster than anything, because you will see immediately what drives a human being and be able to place them within the process and help them see where they fit in the change.
Absolutely. If you think about how many things you have done that have been trial and error, right? Now we know there's a period of time, a little bit of inventive time, right, where you try stuff and you see if it works, and people go, let's throw some stuff on the wall and see what sticks, those types of things. The beautiful part about understanding the dignity of another person and what motivates them and what really drives them is that you don't necessarily have to go through a lot of trial and error when you're executing your vision. When you're executing your vision and you're taking Joe and Tom and Sally and Susie, and you're like, well, you maybe do that, and you do that, and you do that, and you try that for 6 months, and that's a wreck.
Yeah.
Right? And you go, okay, everybody regroup.
Okay, waste time.
Regroup. Let's try this. If you've given Sally an area of your vision that is incredibly detailed. And Sally's like, does anybody know where my glasses are? And they're on her nose, right? I mean, I'm a little, that sometimes is me, you know. And you, in some ways, you've set Sally up to fail because Sally's not built for that part. She's built for something else. But we want to figure it out. And that fast forward element, that's why I love Dignify so much, is it's a system for you to best place those folks on your team so that not only does it accelerate your vision, it accelerates your vision in a way that accelerates them as a person.
That's right.
They feel that acceleration.
Yes.
And they are like, wow, I did it. We accomplished the goal. That is like priceless when it comes to your team and what that does for your team.
Every human being fundamentally wants to make a contribution to whatever they're doing. The challenge is we often ask them to contribute to something that not quite their strength. So you're asking them to do something which they can only be mediocre in, which then demotivates them, which then makes them feel bad. And Einstein said, you can't expect a fish to climb a tree. Its whole life it'll feel like it's a failure.
Yep. Okay,
so I'm going to share with you, now you have this vision, what are the first execution elements, okay? So, again, we're going to use a story of one of our clients. I set it up last podcast. We're going to use the same, but I'll just recap it. They're in an industry that is hourly based, right? You work 10 hours, here's my hourly rate, and it's that type of a service, okay? Professional service that is based on the billable hourly rate. The vision is to create some sort of subscription, some sort of value that could be a monthly thing that their clients pay that produces revenue that is obviously of value to that client and that doesn't solely rely on the hourly billable rate. So it's not going extreme. We'll never have hourly billable rate. That's not realistic. And we don't have anything that's not that. So we have to increase it. Okay, now, Jared, I'm going to ask you to focus in a little bit here, right? Grab the camera, and we're going to focus in on this chart. Now, I don't expect you to see everything in detail, but I just want you to see the colors. Okay, and I want to set this up a little bit on the 4 conversations for innovation. Okay, so you have this vision, and it doesn't have to be this crazy innovation. It can just be where you want to head. And now we need to have 4 separate groups that would have a moderator, facilitator, who think in 4 unique ways. So the colors, I'm just going to kind of do a big picture so you kind of understand it. The colors, I'm going to go with the colors. So the yellow, these are 56 dignity traits. I know you can't see them all. Doesn't matter. This is a concept I'm sharing with you. What if you knew who your high creatives were? What if you knew? So people with these yellow traits like unique and idealistic, creative, artistic, musical, enthusiastic, optimistic, these type of motivations, what we call fun country as well, fun country people, they think in a very high way. Matter of fact, their vehicle is the airplane. It sees the entire territory. That's how their brain works. Sometimes they frustrate you because maybe you don't think that way and you're talking about a specific thing and they're like, oh, and then we could. And they, you're like, stop. Come down to earth. Let's talk about this. You get them in a room first and you pose the question. Now, it doesn't just have to be the leadership team, right? That you presented this to. You're going to use your whole system to look up and research creatives. And bloop, it'll show you all your highly creative people. They belong to the room first, and you will facilitate and moderate it with that question. How might we make income not based on the billable hour? That's the question. How might we? And what you will find, as this company found, is in an hour's time, these creatives filled 3 big whiteboards with ideas. I mean, there had to be 50 concepts, ideas, because these people don't think in detail.
Right.
They think, well, what if? Well, what if we do this? And their brain loves it. Their brain loves brainstorming. And you don't have the people in the room that can't stand brainstorming. Maybe you're one of those, right? But if you're running this experience, you're just moderating it, right? You're the one guiding it, but don't participate. Let these creatives throw a bunch of stuff on the wall, okay? That's group number 2. Call to your high creatives. Group number or number one, your high creatives.
Yep.
Group number 2, April, are your bottom liners.
Ah, yes, the bottom liners.
Yes, we call them control
country.
Yeah. Or have some of these orange traits.
Yep.
Right? Like tons of confidence, or born leader, or persistent, or strong-willed, or competent. Okay?
Yeah, some of the green traits fall into that.
Some of the green traits fall into that. But these are your control people. Now, control people, if fun people see the territory, control people see the forest. Okay? They understand sections of the entire territory, but they see broad, but not as broad as the fun. Okay? So they see the forest within this territory, and they're going to look at this 30, let's say 40 ideas. And what they have the gift of doing is saying, you know what? When I look at all these ideas, really 3 things. This really falls into 3 things. And this is what happened. We're going to focus on this, this, and that. In less than an hour, they come up with that, because these are your bottom liners.
Correct.
These are your moves quick to action people. And what you do is you just hand them the marker and say, go. Don't even, you open it up and let them go. Hand it to them, because they're your directors. They're the folks that, just give me control of this. Let me just take them. And they will isolate it into a very bottom line, approachable, but high level themes.
Yep.
Right? Now, go into Dignify, look at all your perfect country people and folks with motivations like organized, perfectionist, precise, okay, competent, what other ones? Independent, self-sufficient.
Yep.
These types of traits, okay? Those are the detail.
Yep.
Okay, so now you're not clouding their brain with these 30 or 40 ideas that creatives came with. You're focusing them only on these 3 concepts that fall within this problem or this challenge of charging beyond the billable hour. Okay? Now what they do is they tend to organize the approach.
Yep.
And they'll tell you who should be a part of it.
Which I think is such a gift.
Oh, all these areas are such a gift.
I know. That's just the who needs to be a part of it is, I think, just huge, because so often people start to go, oh my gosh, this is taking so much of my time. Like, how am I going to do this and all my regular work? If you have 15 people doing everything,
Yeah.
right? And this is that group that goes, you only need like 3. You only need this guy, that girl, and this guy. Boom,
And you
done.
approach it this way.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to do this first. You're going to do your research. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And this is what you're going to research. And they take these 3 and kind of create a to-do list to approach it.
Yep.
Okay?
Great planners.
They're great planners. Now you've got that information. And finally, you bring in your efficiency people.
Yes.
These are your peace country. And the peace country folks believe in working smarter, not harder. And they have to see something. And sometimes they have to run with something before they can make it more efficient. Okay? So in this case, these are peace country people with traits like easygoing, low-key, patient, steady, consistent.
Yep. I love it.
Right? Some deep thinkers.
Good listener.
Exactly. These are the folks then who look at what the perfect country people came up with, right? This structure, and go, we could get there fast. I get it. We can get there faster if we just do this. Efficiency. Also, in the story I'm telling you with the group that did this, and so these are a half day.
Yeah.
Okay. The peace country people transitioned into the benefit it is for the customer for these things. It was almost like a marketing plan.
Wow.
They were like, wow, I can really see how this would benefit the customer this way. This would benefit So what came out of it was an unexpected delight of a marketing plan.
Wow.
I mean, maybe not detailed, but the key value propositions.
But they are relational, right?
Yes.
This country is more relational.
They're the relation. They're putting their heart into what would that person feel like? What would the customer feel like, right,
Love
to
it.
receive
Yeah.
this? They're less the technical, more of the relational. That's exactly right.
Neat.
And out of that morning, from that morning, the owner of the company was actually on a Zoom or in the other room watching all this. And they knew he was watching all this. And he would come in after each session blown away Like, we used to argue about this stuff. Like, this used to be like a constant, well, we can't do that because of this. We can't do this because of that, right? And you probably have experienced this. Sure. People run into roadblocks in their own mind because of their own dignity traits. So, for example, if you have a perfectionist, someone who values perfectionistic ways, be a part of a brainstorm, they're going to tell you why it can't be done.
Right. Because
they have to get their head around it, and it takes them a while to do it. They shouldn't be in the first brainstorm session.
Totally.
They matter of fact, will find, once you have the structure down, they will fine tune and make it excellent. But they're at the end of the process. They're not at the beginning of it.
Yeah. And we see that a lot. I'm sitting here thinking, just even for myself, right? I mean, for those of you that we have these 4 countries, we kind of mentioned them as we were going along: fun country, perfect country, peace country, control country. And I'm a fun perfect. I argue with myself all the time.
Yes.
I mean, it's a battle.
It's a quirky combination.
It's a quirky combination.
But it's magical. Once you understand it, it's magical.
But man, it took a bit.
Yeah.
And there are some times when I know I am in a place where you know what? I'm not going to come into the brainstorm meeting because I'm going to be of no help in it. Because I am just in a space that I got to get all the dots and all the T's. I'm going to just wait. And the reality is when we start to better understand, we understand ourselves, certainly, then we start to understand how does that connect to the other people on our team, right? We can be so much more beneficial in what we're getting accomplished and what we're getting done. I don't have to be in every meeting.
Exactly.
I don't have to be.
And I know when I got out of the way, I'm a fun control. So I've got that airplane. I've got the big concept, right? We're going to move from this marketing into this other completely different industry. And here are some steps, control country. Here are the 3 things we're going to conquer first. But then I have to learn to get out of my way. Now I get April involved. Now I get Carrie involved. I mean, these are our perfect country, the how people, right? How are we going to do that? How might we approach this? And I go, I don't know, but here's the curriculum we're going to have. April, you go structure it, research with your team, write it, get everyone involved. I'm not that, but I have what the elements are for a COS, culture operating system. I know what the elements are because I've researched all that. I've done all the research. How do we execute it? So here's what I'm thinking. How might we do it? And that's where you have to know when to get out of the way. Because if you're a leader who is a perfectionist or is a perfect country person, right, you're stifling accidentally the big ideas. You're like, no, I can't wrap my head around that new thing because I feel comfortable with this old thing. Now, reverse that. You're like me, and you just start executing stuff and go, oh, I didn't think of that. And you're just starting to execute stuff, and you realize, ooh, we should have had a follow-up here. We should have had this. We should have had that. I don't see that part. And so for me, I had to learn to step away saying, okay, we won't introduce this until that's put together.
Right. And that's a great point. And when you're beginning to execute your vision with your team, it's important to keep that in mind that when it starts, it can be awkward. It can feel weird. Initially, when we started looking at it this way, and you gave that big idea, and here's what I see, and here it is, and I don't know anything else about it. See ya, right? Initially, that could feel to some of the rest of us like, so you're out? Really, that was the best thing you could do, but it felt like you just got off the bus,
right?
Like, who's driving,
right?
All those kinds of things come up as you're getting. You have to get it. You kind of have to get used to what this feels like because it's very different. The expectation is do that thing that you like, your sweet spot. Do that, and let the other people do theirs.
Exactly.
And then it comes together, and when it comes together, it's incredible.
Yes.
We have seen so many wonderful stories of people's visions that they had this great vision. And they also now had a great execution plan.
That's right. So now, talking about our theme is execution, April, right? Now these key, and remember, you had your leadership team go through this visioning. However, the group may expand when you do what we just described, right? Get your creatives. You may have other people. Depends how large your company is. Not everybody, though. It's not everybody. This company I'm explaining had around 90 employees, and I think in each group there are about 8 in 4 groups. Okay, it can't be overdone. It has to be who has the experience and the motivation, right? So that they know the topic and they can speak into it. Okay, now what came out of this were 4 key initiatives. Okay, so the goal is to not just rely on the billable hour. Mm-hmm. The goal is to come up with strategies and ideas of what we do that could be put into some sort of subscription or some sort of value proposition for the client that they would pay some sort of residual to have this value. So now they identified, I think it was 3 or 4 key initiatives that would contribute to this big idea. So now it's like, have you ever heard, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
Right. Sometimes we see this vision, we don't know how to approach it.
It's a big meal.
Right. So this is how we approach it. You share together, we go far. Mm-hmm. Alone, we'll go fast, but we won't go very far. We'll get exhausted, and then we'll hit the roadblocks, and we won't be able to cross that bridge or that stream because we don't have the team with us. Right. So we want to go far. So you break them up into initiatives, and you produce an owner of that initiative, typically someone on that leadership team. But the owner doesn't mean they have to do it all. Again, you go back to the 56 traits, and you find out who likes to gather information, who likes to do this, and you start inviting. They invite people into a 90-day experience where they just need maybe 3 hours, together once a month. And then they're all going to have their little things that they have to do. And at the end of 90 days, they're going to have this plan of here's how we're going to move forward.
Right.
It changes everything. When you know the motivational makeup and the drivers of human beings, being agile is so much easier because agile is like, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to switch this, I'm going to switch that. But when you know what drives a person, I'm not saying it's going to be muddy. It's going to be muddy in the beginning because it's still new.
Yep,
it's a new process. When you follow the system and follow the process and give people who are motivated emotionally and they're in the position to lead, you're teaching them how to lead their department to scale towards a common vision. So each initiative could be very different, but they're all leading to this idea of raising up the residual income and not being solely reliant on the billable hour.
I love that. And the beautiful piece in there that you don't necessarily always think about as you're putting all those pieces together and you're working that execution plan is what you are doing for your employees' human benefit.
Oh, big
for them.
Big time.
One of the number one reasons that people leave companies is because they don't feel that they are personally developed.
That's right.
Individual development. Individual development doesn't necessarily just mean I want to be able to go on and take 72 classes.
Right.
In it. That's great. And I want to be a part of something that is bigger than myself. And at the end of it, I want to know that I played a role and I did it well. Right? Individual development is huge in our companies. We try to get things done fast. And by trying to get things done fast, we don't necessarily involve our people.
Right.
And our people.
Or the right people.
Thank you. The right people. And those right people who aren't involved, eventually they go to look and see if they could be involved someplace else. Because maybe this isn't the place for me. Maybe this isn't where I can grow. It's a question. It's something that as a leader and a trainer of leaders, I hear often. I want to be able to be better for myself and for my company.
Yeah.
So if they're not ever being involved in those things other than coming in and working your 8 to 5 or whatever it might be, it may not be enough for them. And we know turnover's a real thing.
Well, and your investment in any human being that you employ is shot up when you know their inherent gifts. Because so many people are overlooked for gifts they have because in your mind, that's your role, and that's what you're going to do. But they can contribute to a much greater idea. And everyone that I know wants to be in the room where it happens.
Yes.
Who doesn't want to be in the room where it happens? Imagine your vision sharing that, and you're in the room where it happens. So you will be a contributor to 5-10 years from now when you see this transformation in our industry, because people are going to follow us. They're going to follow us because what we're doing is different, unique, makes sense, and profitable. And you made it happen. Who doesn't want to be a part of that conversation?
Right.
You don't have to be some sort of inspirational leader to share that message. It's inherently within all of us. We all want more. We all want to be included. We all want to contribute what we're good at. We want to discover what we're good at. Some of us don't always know, but when we start exercising that muscle, we're like, oh, kind of good at that, right? This kind of feels right. I think we all kind of stumbled into our career because of that.
I would agree.
We stumbled into our career, and it's just an amazing feeling. We have people like economical is one of the traits on Dignify, and you'll interview like someone who's a banker, or they typically are in finance, somewhere. And they're like, well, I just think you have to be economical to be in finance. I said, no, you're economical and you found finance. That's where your heart went. You just kind of felt it. You vibed it. And you're like, ooh, this feels right. I like working with money. I like trying to save money. It just feels good. I'm that way at home. I get to be that way at work. So that's, you gravitated to that position. You didn't become economical because you're in the position.
And it's interesting. You can also look at that same trait of economical. And I've noticed as we've learned and have grown, a lot of HR people have economical. They're economical. How can we get the best bang for our person that I'm going to hire? If somebody has more skill, I can use them here and I can use them here.
They can speak into this, but this is their regular job.
Exactly. Like, wow, that is beneficial to us.
Yeah.
That also comes from economical. And so it's just so cool how when you start to really dig into these motivational traits and you really start to see how people are wired, where they end up makes sense.
That's right.
Where they end up makes sense. And we want to grow them and watch them bloom and blossom. And therefore, it also blooms and blossoms our companies.
Yeah. So if you want to really take your company to the next level, reach out to us. We'll show you how to do it. Let me recap how this works. First, you need a vision. Then you take that vision. You present it to your leadership team. You ask them to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Then you analyze the people in your company who can contribute to 4 areas of brainstorming. The first one of the fun country, the high creatives. They see the territory. That's about an hour. They brainstorm, fill a wall full of ideas on how to get to that vision. Then your control country people, the bottom liners, will whittle it down into 2 or 3 main concepts. Then you bring your perfect country people. How will we approach concept 1, 2, and 3? They'll tell you who should be a part of it. They'll tell you about the approach you're going to need to take and the stages you should probably think about. And then finally, the peace country people come in. They're your efficiency. They're going to start thinking about how it will affect people, what the benefit of this is. They're just going to take it and share some amazing information that you don't know what's going to come out of it because of how they think, but it's going to make it better.
Yes.
And now, once you have that, you break them into key initiatives, giving those leaders ownership of the initiatives, of which they need to find their input teams to speak into it. They have their own little meetings on how we're going to get after initiative 1, 2, 3, or 4. And every cadence, they should meet monthly. And every 90 days, they should meet with you if you're the top leader and say, here's our next 90 days to approach this. Here's our next 90 days. Here's our next. You're creating 30, 60, 90-day plans to achieve this vision. Now, that is one bite at a time. That sparks the heart of your individuals, helps them be a part of something, and that is about the execution, which is the hardest thing, which you mentioned earlier. The hardest thing is not the idea.
Right.
The hardest thing isn't even the vision. Yeah, you got to write it down. It's harder than the idea.
Yep.
And the hardest thing is getting people to rally around and execute. And that is where Dignify, boom, will get you there immediately. within 30 seconds to see, pull up the people who have these talents that you need to take it to the next level. So thanks for signing into the Dignity Dialogue. Oh, dignity is awesome, and it can also scale your company like you would never believe when you put it into a system. I'm Joe Kiedinger. This is April Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
This has been the Dignity Dialogue with Joe Kiedinger. Talk at you later.